The cockpit smells of oil and cold sweat. January 17th, 1944. 23,000 feet above the Ruhr Valley. The sky is a pale, frozen blue. Lieutenant Daniel "Danny" Hooper, 21 years old, 72 flight hours in his logbook, grips the control stick of his P-51 Mustang with hands that won't stop shaking. The radio crackles. His wingman is gone. Shot down 2 minutes ago. Now it's just him, and 13 black dots descending from the sun. Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Focke-Wulf 190s. Each one flown by a veteran who has already killed more men than Danny has met. His squadron called the P-51 a hot rod. The British called it a waste of aluminum. The Germans called it a joke. Danny's father called him 3 days before he shipped out and told him to pray every morning. He didn't. Now, as the first tracer rounds rip past his canopy, he closes his eyes for half a second and whispers something that isn't quite a prayer. The Germans are 30 seconds out. For minutes of his life are about to decide whether the P-51 Mustang is a legend or a coffin. In 1940, Britain was losing the air war. The Luftwaffe had swept across Europe with terrifying speed, and the Royal Air Force was bleeding pilots faster than training schools could replace them. The United States, still officially neutral, watched from across the Atlantic. But American aircraft manufacturers saw an opportunity. North American Aviation received a contract from the British Purchasing Commission to design a new fighter. The clock was ticking. They had 120 days. The result was the NA-73X, later designated the P-51 Mustang. It was sleek, fast, and aerodynamically advanced. Engineers marveled at its laminar flow wing design. Test pilots praised its handling. But when the first Mustangs arrived in Britain in 1941, reality hit hard. The aircraft was powered by the Allison V1710 engine, a reliable piece of American engineering that performed beautifully at low altitude. Above 15,000 feet, it choked. Power dropped. Speed fell. In the thin air of high-altitude combat, where German fighters thrived, the early Mustang was a liability. RAF pilots tested it and returned with scathing reports. It couldn't catch German bombers. It couldn't dogfight Bf-109s at operational altitude. One pilot called it a waste of good aluminum. Another said it handled like a dream, but fought like a drunk. The nickname spread quietly through British airfields, Flying Coffin. The Mustang was fast enough to get you into trouble, but not powerful enough to get you out. By 1942, the P-51 was relegated to low-level reconnaissance and ground attack missions, tactical roles, support work. It was not trusted with air superiority, not trusted to escort bombers deep into Germany, not trusted to survive against the Luftwaffe's best. Meanwhile, the American 8th Air Force was assembling in England, preparing for daylight bombing raids into the heart of Nazi-occupied Europe. The strategy was bold: fly B-17 and B-24 bombers in massive formations, protected by their own defensive firepower, and destroy Germany's industrial capacity in broad daylight. But the losses were catastrophic. Without long-range fighter escorts, German interceptors tore into the bomber formations with impunity. Entire squadrons were wiped out. Hundreds of young men burned alive or froze to death at 30,000 feet. The 8th Air Force needed a fighter that could go the distance, stay with the bombers all the way to Berlin and back, and fight the Luftwaffe on equal terms. The P-47 Thunderbolt was tough and heavily armed, but its range was limited. The P-38 Lightning had the range, but it was complex, expensive, and struggled in the cold European skies. The P-51, with its sleek airframe and efficient design, had the potential, but that Allison engine was killing it. Then, in late 1942, someone had an idea. Ronald Harker, a test pilot for Rolls-Royce, flew a Mustang at the company's facility in England. He was impressed by the handling, but frustrated by the engine's performance. He wrote a memo suggesting a radical modification. Replace the Allison with the Rolls-Royce Merlin, the same engine that powered the legendary Supermarine Spitfire. The Merlin was a masterpiece of engineering, supercharged and optimized for high-altitude performance. If it could transform the Spitfire into a world beater, maybe it could save the Mustang. The idea traveled across the Atlantic. North American Aviation, working with Packard Motor Company, began producing the Merlin under license. Engineers redesigned the Mustang's airframe to accommodate the new engine. The result was the P-51B. It rolled off the production line in mid-1943. The first test flights were revelatory. At 25,000 feet, the P-51B didn't just perform. It dominated. Top speed exceeded 440 miles per hour. Rate of climb improved dramatically. Range, with drop tanks, extended beyond 1,600 miles. Suddenly, the Mustang wasn't just viable. It was exceptional. But reputations die hard. Even as the first P-51BS arrived in Europe in late 1943, many pilots remained skeptical. The old stories lingered. The nickname lingered. Veteran pilots stuck with their Thunderbolts and Lightnings. The Mustang groups were often filled with younger, less experienced pilots. Men fresh out of training, with barely enough hours to qualify for combat duty. Men like Danny Hooper. Danny Hooper grew up in rural Ohio, where the only planes he ever saw were crop dusters. He enlisted in the Army Air Forces in early 1943, driven by a mix of patriotism, adventure, and the desire to escape a life of farming. Flight training was brutal. Ground school, basic flight, advanced combat tactics. Washout rates were high. But Danny had good reflexes and a stubborn streak. He passed. Barely. He was assigned to the 354th Fighter Group, one of the first units equipped with the P-51B. When he arrived in England in December 1943, the base was cold, muddy, and filled with men who had already seen friends die. Danny was part of a replacement pool, assigned to fill gaps left by casualties. He flew his first mission on January 5, 1944, an escort run to Bremen. He didn't fire his guns, didn't see a single German fighter. The mission was a milk run, and he returned feeling both relieved and disappointed. His second mission, 3 days later, was more eventful. German fighters appeared, distant specks that dove through the bomber formation and disappeared before Danny could react. He heard his squadron leader shouting on the radio, heard the rattle of gunfire, saw a B-17 trailing smoke. But by the time he turned his head, it was over. The veterans in his squadron treated him with polite indifference. He was a rookie, unproven. They had seen too many rookies arrive full of confidence and leave in a box. One pilot, a Texan named Carter with 9 kills, told him bluntly over a beer, "The Mustang's a good bird now, but it won't save you if you're stupid." Danny nodded and said nothing. By mid-January 1944, the 8th Air Force was ramping up operations. The target list was growing. Berlin, Schweinfurt, Regensburg. Every mission pushed deeper into Germany. The Luftwaffe was responding with everything it had. German fighter wings, equipped with veteran pilots and advanced tactics, were inflicting heavy casualties. The average life expectancy of a bomber crewman was 15 missions. 4 fighter pilots. The odds were better, but not by much. The Luftwaffe's ace culture was legendary. Pilots like Adolf Galland, Gunther Rall, and Erich Hartmann were household names in Germany, celebrated as heroes. The German fighter arm was structured around individual skill and aggressive engagement. An experienced German pilot, flying a Bf-109G or FW-190A, was a lethal adversary. They knew their aircraft inside out. They understood energy management, deflection shooting, and situational awareness at a level that took years to develop. Most of them had been flying combat missions since 1940 or earlier. They had fought over Poland, France, Britain, Russia. They had seen every trick, survived every mistake. For a rookie like Danny, facing even one veteran German pilot was a death sentence. Facing 13 was mathematically impossible. The morning of January 17th began like any other. Briefing at 0600 hours. The target, an industrial complex near Osnabrück. Heavy bomber formations would strike the factories. The 354th Fighter Group would provide close escort. Weather was clear, which meant good visibility for everyone. Danny's flight consisted of 4 aircraft. His element leader was a captain named Briggs, a steady pilot with 5 confirmed kills. Danny's wingman was a lieutenant named Kowalski, Another rookie with even fewer hours. The fourth plane was flown by a veteran named Perry. They took off at 0815 hours, formed up over the English Channel, and climbed to altitude. The bombers appeared below them, massive silver fortresses in tight formation, their contrails stretching back toward England like white scars across the sky. The radio chatter was professional and calm. Instructions from the mission leader. Acknowledgements from the flights. Everything was routine. They crossed into German airspace at 0920 hours. The flak started immediately. Black puffs of exploding shells that burst around the bombers like deadly flowers. The Mustang stayed high, weaving gently to avoid becoming predictable targets. Danny's eyes scanned the horizon. Nothing yet. Then, at 0947 hours, the call came. Bandits, 2 o'clock high, 12 plus. German fighters, diving out of the sun. Danny's heart slammed into his throat. He craned his neck, squinting against the glare. There, black crosses, angular silhouettes, BF-109s. They were coming fast. Briggs' voice cut through the radio. Luftwaffe drop tanks engage. Danny hit the release. The external fuel tanks tumbled away. His Mustang felt lighter, more responsive. The engine roared as he pushed the throttle forward. The Germans were splitting into pairs, classic tactic, setting up for slashing attacks through the bomber formation. Briggs turned hard into them. Danny followed, Kowalski tight on his wing. Then everything went to hell. Danny Hooper had 72 hours in the cockpit, and 60 of those were stateside training. He knew the textbook maneuvers. Immelman turn, split S barrel roll. He had practiced gunnery runs on towed targets and mock dogfights against other trainees. But none of it prepared him for the violence of real combat. The first German attack came so fast he barely registered it. A BF-109 slashed through their formation, guns flashing, and Kowalski's Mustang simply disintegrated. One moment he was there, bright aluminum and painted markings. The next, a fireball tumbling toward the earth. No parachute, no radio call, just gone. Danny's breathing stopped. His vision tunneled. Briggs was shouting something, but the words didn't make sense. Another 109 rolled in, and Danny jerked the stick hard left, purely on instinct. Tracer round snapped past his canopy, so close he could see the phosphorescent glow. His training instructor's voice echoed in his head. When you're defensive, you're already losing. He shoved the stick forward, diving, using gravity and the Mustang's speed to break the attack. The G-forces crushed him into his seat. His vision grayed at the edges. The altimeter unwound. 20,000 feet. 18. 15. He pulled back, hard, leveling out, gasping for air. The sky above him was full of enemy fighters. He counted them in a heartbeat. 8. No. 10. 13. All focused on him. Briggs was gone. Perry was gone. He was alone. His hands were shaking so badly, he could barely hold the stick. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to dive for the deck, and pray his engine held together long enough to outrun them. But they were already above him, already faster, already setting up. The rookie in him wanted to panic. The pilot in him, the part that had somehow survived 2 weeks of combat, forced his brain to work. Energy, altitude, speed. He had a little of each, but not enough. The Germans had more. They had experience. They had numbers. But they also had arrogance. The P-51 Mustang that Danny flew in January 1944 was a fundamentally different machine than the one the British had rejected in 1941. The marriage of the Mustang airframe with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine was one of the most successful engineering partnerships of the war. The Merlin 61, built under license by Packard as the V-1650-3, featured a two-stage, two-speed supercharger that delivered consistent power at high altitude. At 25,000 feet, where the old Allison engine wheezed, the Merlin sang. It produced 1,450 horsepower, smooth and responsive across the throttle range. The airframe itself was a work of aerodynamic art. North American Aviation had designed the Mustang around the NACA laminar flow airfoil, a wing shape that minimized drag by keeping airflow smooth across the surface. The result was an aircraft that could cruise at high speed with exceptional fuel efficiency. With two 75-gallon drop tanks, the P-51B could escort bombers to Berlin and back, a round trip of over 1,600 miles. No other Allied fighter in early 1944 could match that range. But the Mustang wasn't perfect. The early B model had only 4.50 caliber machine guns compared to the 6 on later variants. Ammunition capacity was limited. The gun sight was basic. The cockpit visibility, while good, wasn't as panoramic as the later bubble canopy D model. And the aircraft demanded respect. It was fast, which meant mistakes happened quickly. A pilot who mismanaged his energy in a dogfight could find himself in a stall or a spin before he realized what was happening. But for a pilot who understood it, who learned to work with its strengths, the P-51B was a revelation. It could outrun almost anything. It could outturn most German fighters at high speed. And in a dive, it was untouchable. Danny didn't fully understand his aircraft yet. He hadn't had time to build that instinctive bond. But in the next 4 minutes, the Mustang was going to teach him everything. The German pilots diving toward Danny Hooper were not random interceptors. They were members of Jägerschwader II, a storied fighter wing with a history stretching back to the Battle of Britain. Many of them wore the Knight's Cross, Germany's highest decoration for valor. Between them, they had over 200 confirmed kills. They had shot down Spitfires over the Channel, P-47s over France, and countless Soviet fighters over the Eastern Front. They had survived years of combat through skill, aggression, and an unshakable belief in their superiority. The leader of the formation, Hauptmann Klaus Neumann, had 31 kills. He flew a Bf-109G6, painted in the mottled gray-green camouflage of the Luftwaffe, with personal markings on the tail. He had spotted the lone Mustang the moment it separated from the American formation. A straggler, isolated, probably damaged or piloted by someone incompetent. Either way, easy prey. Neumann signaled his wingman. The attack would be methodical. They would bracket the Mustang from multiple angles, denying it any escape vector. Someone would get the kill. It didn't matter who. What mattered was maintaining the Luftwaffe's dominance. As they closed in, Neumann felt the familiar calm that came before a kill. The Americans had good aircraft now, better than the clumsy P-40s and P-39s of a year ago. But aircraft didn't win dogfights. Pilots did, and the Luftwaffe still had the best pilots in the world. He armed his guns and rolled into the attack. The Mustang broke hard, a desperate evasive maneuver. Neumann smiled. For minutes, maybe less. Then back to base for lunch. Danny's first move saved his life. Instead of turning into the nearest attacker, which would have bled his speed and made him an easy target for the others, he dove. Straight down. Full throttle. The Merlin engine screamed. The airspeed indicator climbed past 400 miles per hour. The Mustang's airframe shuddered, but it held. The Germans followed, but the dive scattered their formation. They were experienced, but they were also cautious. A high-speed dive could overstress an airframe, pull too hard on the stick coming out, and the wings could rip off. Danny didn't know the aerodynamic limits of his aircraft. He only knew he had to go faster than they were willing to go. At 10,000 feet, he pulled back. The G-forces slammed into him like a physical blow. His vision went black around the edges. Blood drained from his head. He grunted, tensing his leg and stomach muscles, forcing blood back to his brain. The Mustang arced upward, clawing back toward altitude. Behind him, the Germans recovered from their dives, reforming. He had gained maybe 20 seconds. Now what? His training came back in fragments. Energy is life. Altitude is energy. Speed is energy. Never give up both. He had speed. He had a little altitude. He didn't have time. A Focke-Wulf 190 came in from his left, cannon round stitching the air. Danny snap-rolled right, then reversed, a random jink that threw off the German's aim. The FW-190 flashed past, and for a split second, Danny saw the pilot's face. Oxygen mask, goggles, focused. He shoved the stick forward again, diving, then pulled hard into a climbing turn. The Mustang responded beautifully, its laminar flow wing gripping the air. Another 109 overshot, unable to match the turn radius. Danny didn't fire. He didn't have a shot, and he couldn't afford to waste ammunition. His only goal was survival. Every maneuver was reactive, chaotic, desperate, but it was working. The Germans were fast, but they were also in each other's way. 13 fighters trying to kill one target in the same airspace created a traffic problem. Twice, Danny saw German aircraft break off to avoid mid-air collisions. He was surrounded, but not yet dead. The German pilots were growing frustrated. Newman had expected the Mustang to go down in the first pass. When it didn't, he assumed the pilot would make a mistake in the second. But the American kept slipping away. Newman's wingman, Oberleutnant Dietrich, radioed in clipped German. "He's lucky." Newman didn't believe in luck. The American was either very skilled or very panicked. Panic could look like skill for a few moments, but it always ended the same way. The pilot ran out of ideas, ran out of energy, and died. Newman signaled for a coordinated attack. 3 fighters would come in simultaneously, from different angles. The Mustang couldn't evade all 3. But coordinating 13 aggressive pilots in the middle of a dogfight was harder than it sounded. 2 of the younger pilots, eager for a kill, jumped early. Their attacks were uncoordinated, predictable. The Mustang dodged both. Newman cursed over the radio and ordered everyone to maintain discipline. Meanwhile, inside Danny's cockpit, the psychological pressure was crushing. Every time he glanced over his shoulder, there were more of them. Black crosses everywhere. Tracer fire crisscrossing the sky. His radio was silent. No friendly voices. No cavalry coming. He was alone, and his mind was screaming at him that he was going to die. But somewhere beneath the fear, a strange clarity emerged. He stopped thinking about the 13 fighters. He focused on one at a time. The one directly behind him. He broke into it, forcing it to overshoot. The one diving from above. He dove faster, used gravity as a weapon. The one trying to cut him off. He snap-rolled and reversed, a move so sudden even he wasn't sure how he did it. He wasn't flying the textbook anymore. He was flying on pure instinct, and the Mustang was responding. Aircraft are machines, and machines have limits. Danny's Mustang was burning fuel at an alarming rate. The constant maneuvering, the full throttle dives and climbs, were consuming gasoline faster than cruise flight ever would. He glanced at the fuel gauge. Half tanks. Maybe 20 minutes of hard combat left. Maybe less. Ammunition was another concern. He had fired only a few short bursts. Defensive snapshots that hadn't hit anything but forced attackers to break off. The .50 caliber Browning machine guns held about 350 rounds per gun. He had maybe 1,200 rounds left total. Not much. The engine temperature was climbing. The coolant system was working overtime, dissipating the heat generated by the Merlin's supercharged fury. If he pushed too hard for too long, the engine could overheat, seize, and turn the Mustang into a 10,000-pound glider. The airframe itself was under stress. Every high-G maneuver strained the wing spars, the fuselage structure, the control surfaces. The Mustang was tough, but it wasn't invincible. Danny could feel the slight shudder in the stick, the feedback from metal and hydraulics screaming under load. He didn't know it, but he was flying right at the edge of the aircraft's performance envelope. One wrong move, one over-aggressive pull, and something would break. But he didn't have the luxury of caution. The Germans were still closing in, and the clock was ticking. 3 minutes had passed since the fight began. One more to go. At 3 minutes and 15 seconds into the fight, Danny made a mistake. He pulled too hard coming out of a dive, and the Mustang shuddered violently. For a moment, he thought the wings were going to tear off. The stick went mushy. He had stalled. The nose dropped, and the aircraft started to spin. Altitude bled away. 15,000 feet. 12. The Germans saw it and dove in for the kill. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. A spinning aircraft was a dead aircraft. Newman lined up his sights, tracking the Mustang's descent. His finger tightened on the trigger. But Danny didn't freeze. His instructor's voice came back. Spin recovery. Throttle idle. Opposite rudder. Stick neutral. He stomped the right rudder pedal. Centered the stick. The Mustang's rotation slowed. The nose came around. He added power, gently, and the aircraft responded. The spin broke. He was flying again. Altitude, 9,000 feet. The Germans were right on top of him. A Bf-109 roared past. So close Danny could see the rivets on its fuselage. He yanked the stick back and rolled, pure reaction. The Mustang looped, a wild, uncontrolled maneuver that somehow put him behind the 109 for a split second. He didn't think. He just fired. The .50 calibers hammered. Tracer rounds walked across the 109's left wing. Pieces flew off. The German fighter rolled away, trailing smoke, and disappeared into the clouds below. Danny didn't see if it crashed. He didn't have time. Two FW-190s were closing from his right. He broke left, but they anticipated it. Cannon fire erupted around him. His Mustang shook. Impacts. Something hit the tail. Alarm screamed in his headset. He glanced back. The rudder was damaged, fabric torn, but still attached. The aircraft was still controllable. Barely. He dove again, using the Mustang's speed advantage. The FW-190s followed, but they couldn't match his acceleration. He extended the distance, just a few hundred yards, enough to breathe. For minutes. The fight had been going on for 4 minutes. It felt like hours. His arms were burning. His neck ached from constantly craning to check his six. Sweat poured down his face, despite the freezing cold. And the Germans were still there. Still hunting. But something had changed. They were more cautious now. The easy kill had turned into a prolonged engagement, and prolonged engagements were dangerous. Other Allied fighters could arrive. Fuel was a concern for the Germans too. Newman made a decision. One more coordinated pass. If the Mustang survived, they would break off. He radioed the order. 6 fighters formed up for a final attack. 3 from above. 3 from below. Danny saw them coming. He had no energy left for fancy maneuvers. No altitude to trade. No speed to spare. He was out of options. So he did the only thing left. He turned directly toward the closest attacker and opened fire. It was suicidal. A head-on attack against a veteran pilot. But it was also unexpected. The Bf-109 coming at Danny was flown by Oberleutnant Dietrich, Newman's wingman. 17 kills. For years of combat, he saw the Mustang turn toward him and felt a flicker of surprise. Head-on attacks were rare. Most pilots tried to evade, not engage. But Dietrich didn't flinch. He armed his 20mm cannon and machine guns and prepared to fire. The 2 aircraft closed at a combined speed of over 700 miles per hour. The distance collapsed in seconds. 1,500 feet. 1,000. 500. Both pilots fired. Danny's .50 calibers blazed. Dietrich's cannon thumped. The air between them became a corridor of intersecting fire. Danny felt impacts all along his Mustang's left wing. Metal screamed. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across the inside of the canopy. But he kept the trigger down. His rounds walked up the 109's nose, into the engine cowling, into the cockpit. The German fighter staggered. Smoke poured from the engine. The canopy shattered. At the last possible second, both pilots broke. Danny rolled right. Dietrich's 109 rolled left, or tried to. The controls didn't respond. The fighter pitched down and entered a steep dive, trailing fire. Dietrich didn't bail out. His parachute was never seen. Danny didn't watch him fall. He was already turning, searching for the next threat. But the sky was suddenly empty. The remaining German fighters were pulling away, climbing back toward altitude, reforming. Newman's voice crackled over the German radio frequency, ordering a withdrawal. Fuel was critical. The American had survived longer than anticipated. The mission was over. Danny didn't understand what was happening. He only knew that the black crosses were getting smaller, farther away. His hands were still locked on the stick. His breathing was ragged, desperate. The engine was running rough. Something was wrong with the left wing. The aileron response was sluggish. The rudder was barely functional. But he was alive. He checked his fuel. Less than a quarter tank. He was deep inside German territory, alone, flying a damaged aircraft. But the Germans were gone. He turned west, toward England, and pushed the throttle forward. The Mustang responded, limping but flying. The radio suddenly crackled to life. An American voice, calm and professional. Blue 4, this is Ranger Lead. Do you read? Danny keyed the mic. His voice came out as a croak. Ranger Lead, Blue 4. I'm hip at flying. Copy, Blue 4. We have you on radar. Steer 270. We're sending an escort. 20 minutes later, two P-47 Thunderbolts appeared on his wings. The pilots gave him a thumbs up. One of them radioed, "Nice flying, Mustang. We'll get you home." Danny nodded, even though they couldn't see him. He didn't trust his voice anymore. The English coast appeared ahead, gray cliffs and green fields. He had never seen anything more beautiful. He crossed the channel at 5,000 feet, the Mustang shaking and groaning but still flying. The airfield appeared. He radioed the tower. Tower, Blue 4. Declaring emergency. Hydraulics damaged, controls limited. Blue 4, you're cleared to land. Emergency crews standing by. He lined up on the runway, dropped his landing gear manually, and held his breath. The Mustang touched down hard, bounced once, and rolled to a stop. Danny sat in the cockpit for a full minute, unable to move. His hands were still gripping the stick. Ground crew swarmed the aircraft, shouting, pointing. Someone climbed up and opened the canopy. Cold air rushed in. "Lieutenant, you okay?" Danny nodded. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. He just nodded again. They helped him out of the cockpit. His legs buckled. Two crew chiefs caught him and lowered him to the ground. He sat on the cold tarmac, staring at his Mustang. The left wing was shredded. Over 50 bullet and cannon holes. The rudder was hanging by a thread. The fuselage was pocked with impacts. One of the crew chiefs whistled. "Jesus Christ, sir. How the hell are you alive?" Danny didn't answer. He didn't know. The intelligence officers arrived within the hour. Danny was still in his flight suit, sitting in the debriefing room with a cup of coffee he couldn't drink. His hands were shaking too badly. A major with kind eyes sat across from him and opened a notebook. "Take your time, Lieutenant. Walk me through it." Danny started talking. The words came out in fragments at first, disjointed and confused. Then they came faster. The ambush. Kowalski's death. The dive. The 13 fighters. For minutes of chaos. The head-on attack. The German fighter going down. The major didn't interrupt. He just wrote, filling page after page. When Danny finished, the room was silent. The major looked up. 13 enemy fighters. Confirmed. "Yes, sir. I counted them." "And you engaged them alone for 4 minutes?" "Yes, sir." "Did you get a visual identification on any of them? Unit markings? Tail numbers?" Danny closed his eyes, trying to remember. Some had yellow noses. One had black and white stripes on the tail. The major nodded slowly. "That's Jageschwader 2. Some of the best pilots in the Luftwaffe." He stood up and shook Danny's hand. "Lieutenant, I don't know how you did it, but you just survived an encounter that should have killed you 10 times over. We'll verify as much as we can, but based on your account and the damage to your aircraft, I'm recommending you for a Distinguished Flying Cross." Danny didn't know what to say. He just nodded. The ground crew had already started counting the bullet holes. 53 impacts. 27 on the left wing, 14 on the fuselage, 12 on the tail. 3 had passed within inches of the cockpit. 1 had clipped the canopy frame. If it had been 2 inches to the right, it would have taken Danny's head off. The crew chief, who had pulled Danny from the cockpit, stood beside the Mustang, shaking his head. "I've seen aircraft come back shot up before, but this bird should be in pieces over Germany. Whatever you did up there, Lieutenant, you and this plane had a conversation with God." The story spread through the base like wildfire. By evening, pilots from other squadrons were stopping by to see the Mustang. Some touched the bullet holes, silent and reverent. Others just stared. One veteran pilot, a captain with 12 kills, stood beside Danny at the mess hall. "Rookie, I heard what happened. 13 against 1. For minutes. That's not skill. That's not luck. That's something else." Danny looked at him. "What do you mean?" The captain smiled. "It means you're not a rookie anymore." Word reached higher command within 2 days. The 8th Air Force Public Affairs Office saw an opportunity. A young American pilot, flying the new P-51 Mustang, survives an impossible dogfight against a legendary German fighter wing. It was the kind of story that sold war bonds and boosted morale. Reporters arrived at the base. Photographers took pictures of Danny standing beside his battered Mustang. The image appeared in Stars and Stripes, then in newspapers back home. The headline: Rookie pilot survives 13 German aces in 4-minute dogfight. The impact on the P-51's reputation was immediate and profound. For months, the Mustang had been fighting to overcome its early, flying Coffin stigma. Pilots still whispered doubts, even after the Merlin engine upgrade proved its high-altitude capability. But Danny Hooper's survival changed the narrative. Here was proof, dramatic and undeniable, that the P-51 could not only match German fighters, but outlast them. Within weeks, requests for Mustang assignments increased. Veteran pilots, who had clung to their Thunderbolts and Lightnings, began transitioning to the P-51B. Fighter groups equipped with Mustangs reported improved morale. The aircraft was no longer seen as a compromise or a gamble. It was seen as a weapon. Production ramped up. North American Aviation's factories in California and Texas worked around the clock. By spring of 1944, Mustangs were arriving in Europe by the hundreds. The strategic impact was equally significant. With the P-51's extended range, 8th Air Force bombers could now strike targets deep inside Germany with reliable fighter escort. The Luftwaffe, which had bled the bomber formations mercilessly in 1943, now faced a new reality. Every raid came with swarms of Mustangs, hunting German fighters all the way to the target and back. German losses mounted. Experienced pilots, the backbone of the Jagdwaffe, were killed or grounded. Replacements arrived with minimal training and died within weeks. The air war over Europe, which had been a grinding stalemate, shifted decisively in favor of the Allies. Danny Hooper flew 23 more missions before the end of the war. He scored 4 confirmed kills and 2 probables. He was promoted to captain and awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, as promised. But he never talked much about the fight on January 17, 1944. When people asked, he deflected. He credited his aircraft. He credited luck. He never said what he really believed, that for 4 minutes, he had been more terrified than he ever thought possible, and that terror had kept him alive. On the German side, the encounter became a cautionary tale. Hauptmann Klaus Neumann survived the war and was interviewed by Allied intelligence in 1945. When asked about the engagement, he remembered it clearly. "We thought it would be simple. One American, alone, probably damaged. But he fought like a demon, or like someone who refused to accept death. We lost Dietrich that day. A good pilot. After that, we learned to respect the Mustang." Neumann paused, then added, "The aircraft was excellent, but the pilot made the difference. Whoever he was, he deserved to survive." The battered Mustang that carried Danny home was repaired and returned to service. It flew 16 more missions before being retired in late 1944. After the war, it was slated for scrapping, but a ground crew chief who had worked on it after Danny's fight quietly saved the tail section. It was later donated to a museum, where it remains today, bullet holes preserved. Visitors stand in front of it and read the placard. P-51B Mustang, serial number 43 to 12,439. Flown by Lieutenant Daniel Hooper, January 17, 1944. Engaged 13 enemy fighters and survived. 53 combat damage holes. Some touch the metal, feeling the scars. Others take pictures. A few, usually older men who flew in the war, just stand quietly and remember. War is not a collection of statistics or strategies. It is a series of moments, each one sharp and real, in which individuals face the unimaginable and make choices that ripple through history. January 17, 1944, was one of those moments. A 21-year-old pilot with barely enough experience to qualify for combat found himself alone against 13 of the Luftwaffe's best. The odds said he should have died. The textbooks said survival was impossible. But the textbooks didn't account for desperation, instinct, and a machine that refused to quit. The P-51 Mustang went on to become one of the most successful fighter aircraft of World War II. It escorted bombers to Berlin. It strafed airfields across occupied Europe. It dominated the skies in a way few aircraft ever have. But on that cold January day, before all the accolades and production numbers and strategic victories, it was just a rookie pilot and an aircraft that had been mocked as a coffin, fighting together to see one more sunrise. Danny Hooper returned to Ohio after the war. He didn't talk much about flying. He married, raised a family, worked as a mechanic. In 1987, he attended a reunion of the 354th Fighter Group. A reporter asked him what he remembered most about the war. Danny thought for a long time. Then he said, "I remember being more afraid than I ever thought possible. And I remember that the Mustang brought me home." The aircraft is metal and engineering. The pilot is flesh and fear. But together, for 4 minutes over Germany, they became something more. They became proof that courage is not the absence of terror. It is flying straight into it and refusing to let go. That is the legacy of the P-51 Mustang. And that is the story of the rookie who survived.